Skeeter was working, of course, with the Border Patrol for quite a few years, and then he went back home. They talked him into running for sheriff, and he got elected sheriff at some town where he was over in New Mexico. And then after a while, an old buddy of his, I think the one that was the Joe of me and Joe, and he decided they were going to a cattle feeder business. And they went into it just at the wrong time, and went bad broke. They went bankrupt, and Skeeter paid back every cent of it. He got a job with Customs in a kind of a guard position or something of the sort, but of course they didn't keep him there very long. Skeeter Skelton, he was in charge of a station that right there on the Mexican border for Customs. Anyhow, Shooting Times asked me if I would do a column for them. I just didn't have time to do it, and I said, look, I know a fellow that's a whole lot better writer than I am, that you ought to look into. And they, well, who's that? I said, Skeeter Skelton. They said, who? I said, Skeeter Skelton. I never heard of him. And I said, well, you ought to talk to him, because there's your shot, friend. Anyhow, they contacted Skeeter, and he'd been up to Chicago, and on the way back with about 3 or 4 others, they stopped off, and all of them had been celebrating the fact that they were getting back to the station from stakeout in Chicago. They needed shaves, they raunchy looking, that's the way they had to be. Otherwise it stood out like a sore thumb of what they were doing. Thumb? Anyhow, they go in there, and I asked them about it later, and they said, man, that guy's boozy-headed and crocked, and they came in here, and man, we wouldn't have anything to do with him. I said, wait a minute, now tell me more about this. And finally I checked it out and found out what had happened. And he was called and was crocked, celebrating, getting away from Chicago. Sure. Who wouldn't?
That's really true.
Anyhow, he went back up and talked to them, and they were very happy about it. They hired him, and he was with them until he died. And I got to say one thing about old Skeeter's writing. You know, he and I had a running feud. It was something we agreed on that we would do. And I was smart enough to get him to take a shot at me first, and then I could come back at him, which put me in the driver's seat every time. I tried to talk him into writing fiction. You know, a book, a real story. And he said, oh, I tried that. It wasn't. He could have done it. He could have done it real well. And he was one hell of a writer. I think the best natural writer that I've ever run into, Skeeter Skelton.
Well,
and it was a big loss when we lost old Skeeter. He said he couldn't write fiction. I said, Skeeter, you've been writing fiction all these years.